Good morning. I'm super excited. Welcome to Coffee with Cade, where we're going to talk about expectations and everything egg related. And I'm super excited. My friend, fertility advocate, leader, CEO of Donor Egg Bank USA, Vice President of California Cryo Bank, Heidi Hayes is our expert today. Welcome, Heidi.
Oh, Camille, thank you so much for having me. It's
Uh,
great to be here with you.
It is a real privilege. Heidi has been a friend and a strong supporter of the Cade Foundation and just a real leader in this community. So just thrilled to have you. For anyone who has tuned in live on Facebook or Instagram, feel free to type in your questions. You can type them right into those apps, and then I can ask Heidi, and she can respond right now. And if there are questions if you're watching this on tape and you have questions after the fact, we'll make sure that we get those to her. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we actually get started, shameless plug. K Foundation does have a family building grant, which will provide up to $10,000 in support for either fertility treatment or adoption. If you have any questions or you think you may want to apply, please visit us online at cadefoundation.org and click grants, and you'll get all the information there. Okay, moving on. So Heidi, as you can see in the background, is the CEO of Donor Egg Bank USA, which is one of the leading egg donor organizations in the country. Heidi, tell me a little bit about what you do at Donor Egg Bank USA.
Wow, a lot. Donor Egg Bank USA, we started the company actually in 2011 and opened up to the public in 2012. We are the first donor egg bank to ship vitrified frozen donor eggs from fertility practice to fertility practice. Our goal in doing Donor Egg Bank USA was really to make it more affordable and more accessible for individuals to use donor egg. So, Camille, as you know, I went through IVF and was unsuccessful, ultimately did an adoption. And at the time, I was told I could do donor egg,
Okay.
but it was so expensive and I wasn't sure it would work. And so we continued on that adoption route until that didn't work. And sure enough, donor egg worked well for us, and we have twins.
Awesome. So let's back that up a little bit. You use the word vitrified. I know that people often think of eggs being frozen, like I'm going to put uh,
Mm-hmm.
this ice, I'm going to put this water in an ice tray and then stick it in the refrigerator or in the freezer and it's frozen. Tell me a little bit about what the difference is between vitrification and just freezing.
Right. For years, we've been freezing eggs, but we haven't done it very successfully because the methodology that was being utilized really caused ice crystals to form within the egg. And the egg itself is the largest cell in the body, and it is primarily water.
Mm-hmm.
So, what vitrification does is it's considered like a flash freeze, and it freezes very quickly, and it doesn't give time for those crystals to actually form. Therefore, the integrity of the egg itself remains intact, and when you warm it, it's as good as a fresh egg.
Ah, okay, great. And when you say warm, you're talking of warming like we put something in the toaster oven or warming like microwave, or how do you warm the eggs?
Very difficult. So we have highly skilled embryologists in the lab, and we train those embryologists. Warming of eggs is not easy. It does require some speed, dexterity in the hands, but most importantly, it requires that the temperature in the laboratory on the warming bench that an embryologist utilizes to be exact.
Uh,
And if all those things are in place, those eggs will warm beautifully, which then allow the embryologist to go in and do the insemination of the sperm in order to make the embryo.
Wonderful. Okay, so we've learned about egg freezing or egg vitrification and egg warming on the warming bench. Tell me a little bit, let's kind of back up for those who are just um, starting to think about eggs or using an egg donor. Why would someone use an egg donor or work with an egg donor? And what are some of the benefits, and what are some of the concerns that you've seen over the years expressed?
Okay, so why would you need an egg donor? Most of the individuals that use an egg donor are either heterosexual couples, single mothers by choice, or they're gay couples. Obviously, a gay couple knows that they need an egg donor, but others it's because of decreased ovarian function, meaning that their eggs just are not performing in the way that they need to. And this usually happens with age. As we get older, our eggs are getting older too, and they're less likely to be good eggs that will create a baby. And then there's also some women that have premature menopause, and they might actually need an egg donor as well, even in their early 20s, because their bodies have already started to go through the change of life.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, you have these single moms by choice. And these are women that, they might have dreamed of getting married, or maybe they wanted to be single, but they've decided that they're ready to be a mom, and they're going to go ahead and do donor egg in order to make that happen.
And that's usually in the women who are a little older.
Mm-hmm.
Their egg quality has gone down. So I've heard it phrased like described as similar to if you put eggs from the grocery store in the refrigerator, and you just left them there for, let's say, 2 years. You could probably still make an omelet with them, but it may not taste the same as it would if you use them today. Is
Right.
that a good analogy?
It is a good analogy, but I think also as eggs get older, they can have chromosomal damage.
Mm-hmm.
And these eggs then are going to be more likely to cause a miscarry or could have other complications in a pregnancy. That's another reason why many women will turn to a donor egg, because the miscarry rate for a donor egg is much lower than a woman in her 40s.
So tell me, why is that?
Because the eggs are from a vibrant, typically 20-year-old to early 30. The likelihood that there's no chromosomal damage within the egg is great. Usually these are eggs that will perform very, very well. And it will, create both a baby, but it will also cause a couple in their early 40s to be able to get to that baby quicker. By the time you're 40, you wanted that baby yesterday.
Right.
If not before. And you don't want to have to go through a lot of heartache, a lot of cycles, and a lot of miscarries to get there.
Mm-hmm. So I want to also remind folks, if you're watching on Facebook or on Instagram, please send in your questions. I know we've had a number of people send in questions in advance, but if you have something that you would like to ask Heidi, now is the time, and we'll get it answered right on the air. So Heidi, kind of continuing along that, I have had people who reached out to Cade that said, I'm 45 and I need an egg donor. My best friend said that she could do it for me, and she's 45 too. Would there be, sometimes the same issues with the best friend?
Yes. Typically, that best friend probably needs an egg donor herself. But this is typically called a known donor, meaning you found somebody that you know that will be an egg donor. If you're looking for a known donor, I really recommend you look for a woman under the age of 35. You want to make sure that she's very mature, and then both you and she will need some psychological counseling so that you're both ready for not just the retrieval and to create the embryo and the baby, but for a lifetime of knowing this individual and having her in your life.
So that actually brings me to the next question. There are benefits to working with a donor that is not known, or working with someone through Donor Egg Bank, for instance. Can you talk a little bit about why people may choose to work with someone who they don't know?
Many reasons, actually. First of all, when my husband and I were going through the process, everybody that you look at, you think, oh, she might make a good donor. Yeah. But, it's a little awkward to go up to people and say, would you consider donating your eggs? And what's amazing is so many people feel differently about it. Um, so going through an agency, going through someone like Donor Egg Bank USA, you get a wide variety of donors. You know, on our catalog alone, we have 380 egg donors available from all different types of ethnicities and backgrounds, as well as education. So it puts you in the driver's seat. You're able to get in and look at the donors, make a selection that works for you and your family, and you can move immediately forward. The eggs are already frozen and ready to go. So
Mm-hmm.
they're shipped into your laboratory, and you can be in a cycle within 30 days.
So for those who decide that they want to move in that direction, you said you have 380 donors.
Mm-hmm.
What information is available on the donors? Do they have baby pictures? Is it current pictures? You know, what can I see?
Well, first of all, you should know that donors are really well screened. You know, thousands of women apply every year in order to be a donor, but typically only 3 to 8% are accepted into the donor pool. So that donor is going to go through a full family history screening. She's going to have a physical, her health is going to be looked at. She'll have drug screening, infectious disease screening, psychological testing, genetic carrier screening, as well as we have a methodology in which we look through her whole family history, because not everything will show up on a genetic screening. So we have to look at the family history as well to determine if she can move forward. And then all of that is also available to the individual looking for the donor. They're going to be able to see her family history. They're going to get a copy of her carrier screening. You can just know that she tested negative for her drug screening and her infectious disease. But you'll also get, motivational statements. Why did she want to move forward? You'll get her baby photos if she's provided any. You know, some of these women don't always have baby photos because they were born before the day of the digital camera. And then you'll get adult photos as well to look at.
So you can really know what the donor looks like. And for many people, that's important because they want to pick a donor that may look like the female partner.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. That's good. And then tell me a little bit about costs.
So the cost, can vary. You can get just the eggs for about $14,000 to $15,000. But I'm a huge proponent of shared risk plans. Ours is called the Assured Refund Plan, in which you pay more money, typically between $35,000 and $45,000, but it guarantees that you're going to bring a baby home from the hospital. So, and if you don't bring a baby home from the hospital, you'll get all of your money back.
Wow.
I believe in that type of plan because I was unsuccessful with IVF. I had a failed adoption. And I know that it's financially draining to go through all of these different methodologies to become a parent. And if it doesn't work, you need that money back in order to move forward into the next step of your journey.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. Okay. So 16, if you're just getting eggs, 35.
14,500 if you're just getting eggs.
14.5. Mm-hmm. Does that include, well, I guess you guys would just provide the eggs. You don't deal with
Right. It doesn't provide the treatment.
Okay.
So the treatment itself can be anywhere between, $4,500 and about $8,000, depending where you are in the country.
So let's just round. It's a kind of a general number. You may be looking at around 20,000 out of pocket. Mm-hmm. If you just go with, I'm going to get one batch of eggs. And how many eggs are included in one? I'm calling it a batch. That might not be the right word.
We call it an egg lot. I think you can call it a batch. Okay. We put in anywhere between 6 and 8 mature eggs. There are some egg banks out there that will give you an exact number of 6. But, my belief is that women don't produce mature eggs in perfect little groups of 6. And I never want to incentivize an embryologist to freeze an egg that's anything less than the best just to make a group of 6. So we utilize an algorithm to give you between 6 and 8 mature eggs.
Mm-hmm. And let's say, is there any potential for saving money by splitting? Let's say a donor had, I've heard when people work with a live donor, or not live, but
Mhm.
when they work with someone, that if the donor produces a certain number of eggs, they may split it with another group. Is that something
Mhm.
that you do?
So that would be considered a fresh donation. And in a fresh donation, you can split that those eggs amongst multiple individuals. The one thing about a fresh donation is you really don't know how many eggs that donor is going to provide. So Donor Egg Bank USA, we partner with fertility practices throughout the country, and we accept their donors that have typically gone through a fresh donation that produce a lot of eggs that are great donors into the egg bank, so
Okay.
that we can keep the costs low and share those eggs amongst multiple recipients. The other danger of a fresh cycle is your donor might not get through screening, as well as you have to synchronize the recipient cycle with that of the donor. And it can often delay the process between 4 and 6 months.
Okay. So on the plus side, the fresh cycle, you know who the person is, but on the downside, you also know who she is, and she knows who you are.
Mhm.
Basically, cost one cycle. Well, I guess it could vary if you're using going through it fresh versus
Mhm.
frozen. If it's frozen, can you say I want all the eggs of this donor, or do you have to, is that even an option?
It is an option. Depending on how many eggs that the donor has provided, it could be a little more costly. If she only has 2 egg lots, it could be just one cost of 14,500, or possibly 29,000 for 2 egg lots. We have had some individuals come through that have said, "I love that donor. I want all of her eggs," and we can make that happen. Mhm.
Awesome. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about what it is, why people may have it, and we've talked about selecting an or the different options available that you can learn about egg donors. Tell me a little bit about what happens after you picked your egg donor. So you know that there are these good eggs that have been
Mhm.
vitrified and that are available. What's the next step, and how long does it usually take?
Well, I'm going to backstep just a little bit and talk for a second about selecting an egg donor, and then I'll walk you through those steps.
Okay, good.
Because I think selecting an egg donor is a question I get all the time. Um, it's the difficult part of the process, actually. And I think it's the most fun part. So couples approach an egg donor typically having gone through IVF, or perhaps they are now in their 40s and they didn't have the baby sooner, and they're wishing or having some regrets that they hadn't moved forward faster.
Okay.
So the first step is to, I say, grieve your genetics. Grieve the loss, grieve whatever it is that has held you back up to this point, and then move forward.
Mm,
Selecting an egg donor should be a very joyous process. I think it should be something that's celebrated, because if you have a baby with this donor, you want to be able to tell your child one day what an awesome opportunity it was to choose that donor.
right.
So make it something that's celebratory. If it is a heterosexual couple, I really caution the male partner usually to let that final choice be that of the female in the relationship, because it's she that is giving up her genes or her genetics in this process,
Yes.
and let her have more ownership over that decision, and you will find that you will bond with your baby better and be just happier in the long run. Just my 2 cents. And
Mhm.
then lastly, when you select a donor, oftentimes you're looking to select some of the traits that are important to you.
Yes.
But also think of the flip side. When I went through and selected a donor, um, I wanted someone that could actually had some singing talent, because I really have none. And I've always been embarrassed all my life. Like when you do karaoke, I do not want to do karaoke.
I can't believe that, Heidi.
So I did not want my children to have this stigma of a horrible singing voice. And so the donor I chose was great at singing. And I wanted to offset that talent. And I will tell you that my daughter loves to sing in the shower.
That's
So,
beautiful.
yeah.
Well,
So,
okay. You can, your next opera singer, your next diva. Yes, I love it.
okay, so the process.
Yeah.
So once you select your donor, then you'll make some payment and contracts. At least at Donor Egg Bank USA, there is no charge or obligation until you select the donor. Everything is free up until that point.
Got it.
Once you select the donor, you make your payment, you sign the contract, and then we ship those eggs overnight, priority delivery, right into your laboratory. Your nurse will contact you. You'll get started with your cycle. And typically, within 30 days, sometimes as low as 10, you can be moving into a transfer of that embryo into your uterus or into that of a gestational carrier in order to have a baby.
So I want to take a step back because you just talked about shipping eggs. What does that look like? Like, is there someone who's on a plane with a little freezer? Does it go in just an envelope? I mean, what does that look like?
Good question. So eggs, we talked about vitrification. They're very cold, and they need to stay frozen all the time. So there are these containers. They're called a shipping door, and they can take a temperature down into a negative 185 or more degrees.
Okay.
So we use liquid nitrogen to get to that level of coolness. Those eggs then are put into that tank. They're not very big. They put in a box and they go via FedEx. And the likelihood of loss is very, very low. We've done now 8,000 egg warmings, and we have lost, I think, 2 live sets of eggs. And one of those, thankfully, we had more eggs and we were able to immediately replace those eggs. But the risk of loss is very low in the shipping process.
That's fascinating and very exciting. So you just never know. FedEx ships everything. That's amazing. All right. So for those women who may be thinking, wow, what an amazing gift that donating eggs are giving. I think I'd want to do that. How would they go about inquiring about becoming a donor? And can you talk? I know you've spoken a little bit about your criteria and the fact that only was 3 to 8% of them are actually accepted to be finalists in this process.
Right. It is a very rigorous process. So if you want to be an egg donor, you need to be committed. It's not a process that is going to happen overnight. It will take multiple months to get through the screening. Many visits to the local fertility practice. And I would encourage you to contact your local fertility practice if you want to be a donor. And then on top of that, once you've gotten through your screening process, the process to retrieve those eggs looks a little like an IVF cycle, in which you will take stimulating medications via an injection every single night, until which time that the physician says, wow, it looks like we're ready to trigger the maturity of those eggs. So you take a special shot, it's called a trigger shot, and it matures the eggs overnight. You'll come in the next day, you'll receive anesthesia, and you will have a retrieval of those eggs, in which they will go in through the vagina and to the ovary, and they'll take out each of those little eggs one by one. And then you'll recover afterwards, and it'll take a few days to recover, and you'll do great. In the United States, we offer compensation for the time and inconvenience to an egg donor. Okay. It is an opportunity to have some financial gain, but the process is so rigorous that if it's your only motivator, you'll never get through it. So
Mm.
typically it's a combination of a heart to want to help another woman, and some financial offset to cover the time and inconvenience.
And what is the financial, how much are these donors given on average?
Um, Again, it varies around the country, from a low of $3,500 to about 8,500 US dollars in
Mm.
the United States is your average. Now, there are some agencies out there that are looking for very hard to find donors. They might say you need to be in the Harvard Business School, having graduated with your MBA, be 6'1", blonde, and have been a model.
Right.
And then they'll offer a lot of money for that type of situation. But I
Hmm.
will tell you that the field of reproductive medicine really frowns on those circumstances,
Hmm.
because we really believe that the reason for egg donation is to help a woman have a baby, not to create a designer baby in the process.
And that was going to be my next question. So this that leads me to talking about designer babies, where you're saying,
Yeah.
I want my baby to look like this. I want this hair color, this eye color, this chin, this nose. Um,
I I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting certain traits, particularly if you're trying to match someone in the family. Um, but there is something to be said for paying a lot of money
yeah.
for those traits. I think there's a slightly different feel in that. But I do encourage women primarily, as they're looking to try to match themselves. If you have blonde hair, look for a donor that might have blonde hair.
Hmm.
If you have green eyes, maybe you want a donor with green eyes. It's unlikely you're going to find every single trait. You're going to have to compromise on a few different areas, but you should hope to match most of what's important to you.
And if people want more information, both about Donor Egg Bank USA and just about working with a donor in general, are there any, first of all, Donor Egg Bank USA, how can they reach out to you for more information? And then if they want just some good resources so they can learn about this, where can they go?
Right. So you can reach us on our website, donoreggbankusa.com, or via our phone, which is 240-778-6210. I recommend Parents Via Egg Donation is a nonprofit that will provide a lot of information on donor egg, but there are many resources online as well. Um, Making the decision to use a donor egg can sometimes take a little bit of time, but I will tell you, if you make the decision, you won't regret it. You will love that baby that you ultimately will have, and you'll be very happy you moved in this direction. Let me just share, Camille, that for those that go through our assured refund plan, that's our money back guarantee, 92% of people that pay for that program take a baby home from the hospital. So it's highly successful, and it's likely to get you on your journey to becoming a parent successful.
And at the end of the day, what everyone wants is to bring home a healthy baby.
Yeah.
And so that may mean that you have to spend a little bit more than you anticipated. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it, after it's all over, most people are still very happy and they're not remembering the cost. They might have counted originally, but they're not doing it after the fact.
I often say to people that everyone will become a parent that wants to be. The
Amen.
question is, how long will you persevere, and how much money will you have to spend to get there? And if you can do both of those things, it is within reach and it will happen.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Heidi. This was fantastic. And this is a topic that is of interest to so many people. I feel like the number one question that I get from families that reach out to me is, can you tell me something about donor egg? I'm interested. My doctor has recommended that I look at donors. And so
Mhm.
just been fantastic. So again, thank you, Heidi Hayes, CEO of Donor Egg Bank USA, Vice President of California Cryobank. Amazing, amazing woman, donor mom, donor egg recipient, and mom to three amazing, beautiful, gifted kids who always win our race for the family. I tell you what, I've never seen a whole family that wins in every category. It's just,
everyone in the family but me.
well, I bet if
The
you
runners.
could, well, I bet you could. So she is just a superwoman, and I'm so grateful to have her on today. So for those of you who have more questions, please leave us a message or follow up with Heidi directly at donoreggbankusa.com, and she will be happy to provide you with support. For everyone else, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. And again, for those who may be interested and have a need for support, Cade Foundation does have the Family Building Grant, which is available 24/7 online at cadefoundation.org on the grant page. Thank you so much.
And Camille, before you go, let me just add, for anyone that's interested in donor egg, we do provide an egg lot through the Cade Foundation as part of their grant process.
Yay.
So if you have financial challenges and you want to apply, you do have an option to use Donor Egg Bank USA via the Cade Foundation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're grateful for that. Really, really grateful. So thank you, Heidi. Hold the line. I'm going to turn social media off. And
you want to know what's in my cup?
Oh, I'm sorry, Heidi.
My cup.
Forgive me. This was important. This is Coffee with Cade.
Yes.
So, Heidi, what's in your cup?
What's in my cup is decaf coffee, because my team tells me I have way too energy. They have a hard time keeping up with me, so I have to tone it down. A little bit of hazelnut, and I like to water it down a little bit.
So, and my team tells me that I am on steroids and I'm way over the top anyway. And, I think they would prefer for me to drink decaf, but I have a cup of black tea and it is Dunkin' Donuts and it is full strength. So, yeah, I just keep going. Anyway, my next cup will be mints. So I will probably start to taper off a little bit in the afternoon. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
For those of you who joined us on your lunch break or just for a break in the afternoon, we'll see you next time. Heidi, hold the line. I appreciate it.
Camille.